session of sociology. This is the seventh lecture in lecture series of sociology. In last lecture, we discussed about sociology of India, the emergence of sociology of India. Then we discussed about unity and diversity. In today's lecture, in continuation with that, we will discuss about development and change as modernization, globalization, and then we will discuss about the tribes and caste and diversity, development and change as modernization. In today's lecture, Wilbert Murray understood social change as total transformation of traditional or pre-modern society into a technological dependent social organization generally found in the advanced, economically prosperous, and relatively politically stable nations of Western world. He described the general conditions for industrializations, which include change in values, institutions, organizations, and motivations. According to the modernization theory, development takes place from within the society and follows essentially the same pattern in all societies. The end result of development, according to the modernization theorists, is prosperity and relative political stability. David McClelland, like Max Weber, emphasized that internal factors like values and motives of the person provide opportunities to shape their own destiny. Thus, the problem of backwardness, poverty, malnutrition, etc., are vitally linked to tradition and non traditional thoughts. So, educational program and technical aid aimed at increasing the need for achievement of people of backward areas are needed to solve these problems. Beckland's idea of need for achievement crystallizes this view of motive forces in social change in general and industrialization process as a particular case of social change. He concluded that modernization or development could be achieved through process of diffusion of culture and ideas and technology. Diffusion of culture, we discussed about the diffusion of culture when we were discussing about the culture. There are the critics of modernization theory, and one of them is A.G. Frank. A.G. Frank opined that modernization theories are inadequate from the policy point of view because they fail to define correctly the kind of social and economic processes at work in the developing countries. Rejecting the Western model of development, he asserted that it is not necessary that development would occur in all societies if they adopt the economic policies and the parliamentary democracy on the pattern of West. Social changes, that structural as well as cultural changes. Social change means modification in social institutions, behaviors, or in social relation in a group, community, and society. This will include structural changes that are overall changes in the structure and institution of society. Changes in structure can also be small scale for a short span. Bottomer defined social change as change in social structure, including the size of the society, or in social institution, or in the relationship between institutions. Davis explained it as a change in structure and function of any society. The cause can be economical, political, cultural, technological, or even environmental. Cultural change would mean a variation in cultural phenomenon like beliefs, ideas, creative expressions, attitude, religious, social, and economic organizations, science and technology, and every physical object created by humans. It is much broader social and psychological change. Change in India. Changing India means experiencing difference in Indian society over a period of time. It means Indian society is in transition and undergoing constant process of change. It implies idea of constant change is intrinsic to contemporary Indian society. Factors of change in India. The vastness of plurality of traditions and the caste system makes it different on the world map. The changes of both cultural and structural types specific to Indian society are due to several factors. Contemporary India is developing economy where there is gradual shift from established patterns of traditional society towards modernization through industrial growth and development of modern technology, equipments, and scientific knowledge. It is experiencing process of economic growth, industrialization, urbanization, and globalization. Since these processes are still unfolding, India is experiencing continuous change both culturally and structurally. First factor is colonization. In India, British took control over to establish their own empire. Along with technology, they also transported modern legal and administrative system from Britain. The new system ushered changes in our political, economic, and social structure. The impact of colonialism, therefore, is far more than can be imagined. The far-reaching structural changes due to impact of colony that also initiated cultural changes that can be experienced in contemporary period. The change inherent in colonization were modernization and secularization. They are crucial factors in understanding the ongoing cultural change in India. The Western impact and rise of education lay the foundation for modernization in India during colonial period. M. N. Srinivas, he explained the concept westernization. This concept explains the Western impact at two levels. It includes all changes that happened with intellectual growth due to the spread of Western education, liberal ethos, and rise of middle class along those that are reflected in Western ways of dressing, eating, and adopting of cultural traits. Colonial encounters brought ideas of individualism, nationalism, ideas of freedom, rational and objective thinking. The basic application of such principle of modernity is modernization. Modernization, in simple terms, would mean a process denoting a movement from traditional or quasi-traditional order to certain desired type of technology and associated form of social structure, value orientation, motivation, and norms. Modernization is when, along with technological expansions, people's lives are regulated by choice and not by birth. Secularization is the process that emerges with modernization, where religion is not the guiding framework for human action and is less influential in lives of ordinary people. Industrialization and urbanization. In India, after independence, industrialization was seen as a key to achieving economic growth and development. Industrialization is a process that ensures the growth of industrial society in contrast to the agriculture by structuring the economic system for manufacturing goods and services. Sociologically, societies of industrial types were considered as developed, where the human beings controlled the technological and natural growth with extreme division of labor and prosperity. Closely linked to the process of industrialization and modernization is process of urbanization. It is the growth of cities and movement of people from rural to urban areas, such as towns and cities, where in place of agriculture, employment opportunities are linked to trade, manufacturing, and industrial production. Cities have better education facilities and increased economic activities. This is because they have definite cultural pattern, advanced economic political structure, and modern bureaucratic and administrative system. Urbanization explains the level of cultural change based on modernization and also structural by being an index of economic development. It amounts to change in pattern of behavior, mode of thinking, and relationship and social institutions. Colonialism created new ones and ended earlier existing urban centers of India and industrialization, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. These are the important factors which helps the contemporary India in various ways. The new economic phase in India began with liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Liberalization is the shift in the whole range of economic policies of a country, resulting into privatization and globalization. The state opens up its economy to the world market by reducing control over the economic activities to improve the efficiency and growth of the economy. It was carried out in India to resolve the economic crisis that country was facing in 1990s. The opening of markets to the private player, especially the foreign companies and investments in the areas where mostly the government invested like education, power, civil, aviation, came to be known as privatization. Globalization is free flow of goods and services, ideas, information, technology, and people across the globe. According to IPRO, globalization refers to all those processes by which people of the world are incorporated into a single world society. It is to develop interdependence amongst societies, culture, economies, nations, and people. It means to go beyond the boundaries. Giddens says globalization is the intensification of worldwide social relations, which link distant localities in such a way that local happenings are shaped by events occurring miles away and vice versa. Mass media and information communication technology. This is a crucial factor of modernization and development of India. It has both personal and social consequences. The arrival of technologies of communication in India was during the British period. Printing, telegraph, postal services, telephone, radio, and even cinema all came during the period that were instrumental in bringing about unforeseen changes like rise of public spheres, that is the rapid spread of communication and awakening of people to the fact of being exploited by colonial masters and political struggle for freedom. Television came up in early decades of independence with broadcast right with the government and emerged as a powerful political, cultural, and economic tool. The coming of computers and later mobile phones made us enter in a new era of social media and digital communication. Information technology, one of the major process of network societies and interconnectedness in global world. Social movements caused us change in multiple ways. They occur due to certain societal condition that aims at improving it by bringing transformation in the social structure. Any organized and sustained collective action with shared ideology and objectives aiming to bring change in society can be called as social movement. In colonial period, movement demanded reform in existing social practices, expressed assertion of indigenous culture over the Western, community rights and identity and freedom from colonialism. In post-independent India, movements demanding social justice and equal distribution of power in the past, social and economic inequalities, marginalization of women, weaker section, issues related to community and religious identity. There are three types of movement as per Rao. These movements are reformist, transformatory, and revolutionary. Shah classifies the movement on the basis of socio-economic characteristics of the participants and issues involved. They are peasant, tribal, Dalit, backward caste, women's, industrial working class, students, and middle class movements. Challenges and responses of changing India. Sociologically, societies are never static and are forever changing. India cannot be unchanging if understood sociologically. Contemporary India is developing economy where there is a gradual shift from established pattern of traditional society towards the modernization through industrial growth, development of modern technology, equipments and scientific development. It is experiencing ongoing process of industrialization, urbanization and globalization. The rise of Western liberals' values of democracy, social justice, and nationalism during colonialism led to the framing of constitution for independent India. Social changes was promised by constitution as a part of modernization process. It recognized that India is multi-religious and multicultural. It attempted to bring unity in diversity through core values of democracy and democratic institutions. India aimed to become developed industrial society on the foundation of such constitutional framework and set out to fight structural inequality and provide justice to all sections of society. Changing rural India. Rural India has undergone several changes since independence. The agrarian reforms, along with development, were the goals of Indian government. Reforms caused to end of bounded labors, change in the mode of payment from kind to cash, and rise of free wage and agriculture laborers. Villages are merging into towns, and massive sway of urbanization and globalization are no more little communities. Little community concept was given by Brown. There is decline in traditional occupation and increased commercialization has led to near interconnection with rural and urban economies. This urban folk continuum has given rise to diverse occupation and circulation of labor or seasonal occupation. The great tradition of literate elites seem to control the little tradition of rural folk, and there is a continuous process of communication in two tradition in some areas. Agriculture is no more a single occupation for rural people. The industrialization caused expansion of cities, technology, revolution, and rise in mass media. This has altered the ways of living of masses. The mixed economy policy was followed in independent India, leading to government to control some sectors like power, transportation, etc., and some open to the private industrialist. It also supported small scale industry policies. Post LPG, that is liberalization, privatization, and globalization, the rise of service sector have resulted in growth of urban middle class and also urban poor. The rise in new material culture is evident in the cities and cultural transformations are huge. The skyscrapers, multinational companies, and commercial complex showing international standards are new reality of urban spaces in India. The dominance of private corporation has altered labor's conditions, giving rise to structural inequalities of gender, caste, and class, increasing insecurities and steep competition. It has caused changes in values, beliefs, and norms. Modernization has given rise to education, skill based professions, and high degree of specializations, leading to division of labors to suit the capitalist model of development. The process of Sanskritization has led to rise in education and growth of Mediterranean culture and middle classes. Social structure and practices. Social structure and practices discuss about the three different aspects which defines society of India. These are tribes, caste, and class. We discussed about the social changes in contemporary India. Now we'll focus on the social structures like tribes, caste, and classes found in India. Tribal communities in India are largely excluded from the mainstreams of social life and are often deprived of their indigenous sources of livelihood. They are quite frequently uprooted from their socio-cultural traditions. They experience loss of their dignity and independence. The government policies have had both negative and positive impact on tribal societies, resulting in varying tribal responses to these policies. The word tribe is derived from the Latin term tribus. The term tribe means inhabited place. It denotes a group of persons forming a community and claiming lineage from common ancestors. The term tribe was used by colonial government in India to categorize a large number of groups different from the term caste. The term tribe incorporates communities very different from one another in terms of demographic size, linguistic, cultural traits, ecological conditions, and material conditions of living. The tribals are essentially primitive and backward in character. After independence, the term scheduled tribe (ST) came to be used to denote tribes who are scheduled such under the Constitution of India by relative isolation, cultural distinctiveness, and low level of production and existence. They are the native inhabitants. There are several terms for them like Adivasis, Vanvasis, Janjati, and Anusuchit Jati. WHR River defined tribe as a social group of simple kind, the member of which speaks a common dialect, have single government, and act together for common purpose as warfare. The Census of India 2011 notifies scheduled tribes in 30 states of India. The number of individual ethnic group notified as scheduled tribes is 705. There are distinctive characteristics of tribes in India, and these characteristics are first is definite common geography. Tribal people lives within the definite topography, and it is commonplace for all members of a particular tribe occupying that region. In the absence of common but definite living place, the tribal will lose other characteristics of tribal life like common language, way of living, and tribe community sentiments. Second characteristic is sense of unity. Sense of unity is an invariable necessity for a true tribal life. The very existence of a tribal depends the tribal sense of unity during the time of peace and war. Another characteristic is endogamous group. Tribal people generally do not marry outside their tribes, and marriages within the tribe is highly appreciated. Next is common language. Member of tribal community exchange their views in a common language. This element further strengthens their sense of unity. Another characteristic is ties of blood relationship. Blood relationship is the greatest bond and most powerful force, including the sense of unity among tribals. Next is protection awareness. Tribal people always need protection from intrusions and infiltrations, and for this, a single political authority is established, and all the powers are vested in this authority. Next characteristic is distinct political organization. Every tribe has its own distinct political organization, which looks after the interest of tribal people. The whole political authority lies in the hands of tribal chief. In some tribes, tribal communities or tribal committees exist to help the tribal chief in discharging his functions in the community. Next characteristic is common culture. Common culture produces a life of homogeneity among the tribals. Common culture of a tribe derives from the sense of unity, which depends on sharing a common language, common religion, common political organization. Then, importance of kinship. Kinship forms the basis of tribal social organization. Most tribes are divided into exogamous clans and lineages. Egalitarian values. The tribal social organization is based on the principle of equality. Thus, there is no institutionalized inequalities such as caste system or sex based inequalities. Thus, men and women enjoyed equal status and freedom. However, some degree of social inequality may be found in case of tribal chiefs or tribal kings who enjoy a higher social status, experience of political authority, and possesses wealth. Simple form of religion. Tribes believes in certain myths and rudimentary type of religion. Further, they believe in totem, which is at symbolic object, signifying object having mystic relationships with members of tribe. Socio-economic conditions of tribals in India. The tribal communities, especially in central belt of India, are characterized by declining access to land and other resources due to increased diversions or deforestation or other common property resources for development projects. As a result, a disproportionately high percentage of tribal population has been displaced from their traditional pattern of livelihood without proper rehabilitation. Of the total 104.3 million people belonging to various tribes, total number of tribes in India is 705 according to 2011 census. About fourth-fifth lives in the heart of India, comprising the state of Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Odisha, and West Bengal. These are predominantly forest-based areas with high concentration of poverty. The problem of poverty confronting them in multidimensional in nature, including income and human vulnerability. The Adivasis living in the states are characterized by low level tribes of assets holding, low level of human capital, lack of political participations in decision making process and no political voice. Major causes of tribal poverty are lack of access to secure productive resources such as land, forest, other common property resources like grazing grounds, ponds, tanks, etc. Most important is their insufficient participation in decision making process. There is a continuous erosion in their access to different types of resources on which the tribal depends for their livelihood. The level of poverty among the tribal community in India is higher as compared to other regions. The state sponsored program have poor performance in tribal areas. Their performance in form of human development like health education and training is ineffective. According to the Government of India, the literacy rate among tribal community is rising but at slow pace as compared to other communities and other nations. There is difference in the level of literacy among different tribal communities in addition to difference between the male and female literacy rate of tribal people. The healthcare indicators like infant mortality, morbidity, skilled healthcare are the worst. Female headed households can be seen amongst tribal community. The child poverty and disadvantage based on the women or based on the sexes are very high. The tribal households tend to be poorer in spite of various welfare programs and some changes in their demographic, occupational, and educational levels. Some tribal groups practice hunting and food gathering as their sole occupation, but majority of them are cultivators and agriculture laborers. The rest are engaged in household industries, construction work, plantation, mining, and in other services. Most tribal groups derive their livelihood from agriculture and forest as compared to non-tribal agricultural communities. Their dependence on the forest serves variety of purposes. The building of industries, mines, townships, dams, forest was both by decision and default imposed on the tribal people. The tribal communities carried a burden of economic growth of nation. More than 10 million people were displaced and lost all that they had. The tribal people are continuously losing command over their resources in almost all counts with utter disregard of their traditional rights over land and national resources. There was virtually forced displacement in favor of variety of development projects. The depletion and destruction of forests have eroded the already fragile survival base of tribal communities. The large number of tribals are forced to migrate seasonally or permanently to other rural areas, urban fringes, or cities in search of work opportunities because of being deprived of their traditional source of their livelihood. The policy of globalization and liberalization has only accelerated the process of alienation of the tribals from their natural resources and created a greater insecurity for them. The free movement of human resources, commodities, finance, and technology across national, regional, and local boundaries have adversely affected these communities. The task of fulfillment of tribal rights and loss of their control over their natural resources have evoked a sharp reaction from tribal forest communities. Now we'll discuss about caste. Caste is a system of social stratification. It lies at the roots of Indian social structure. The word caste is derived from Portuguese casta, meaning lineage, breed, or race. Caste can be defined as it is a type of social organization or hierarchy in which a person's occupation and position in life is determined by the circumstances of his birth. I'm repeating again. Caste is a type of social organization or hierarchy in which a person's occupation and position in life is determined by circumstances of his birth. It involves ranking according to birth and determines one's occupation, marriage, and social relationship. There is a prescribed set of norms, values, and sanctions which governs social behavior within caste. Sociologists have defined caste or jati as hereditary endogamous group, which is usually localized. It has a traditional association with an occupation and particular position in local hierarchy of castes. Indian society developed into a complex system based on the class and caste. Caste is based on the idea that there are separate kinds of humans. Higher caste people consider themselves purer, close to moksha, than lower caste people. There are four different levels in Indian caste system. These are Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudras. Caste is the term to describe the complex system of social division that pervades the life in India. Caste is an ancient hereditary system that developed alongside and become intertwined with Hinduism. Social and economic divides still exist across India. Caste determines whom a person can marry, specifies what kind of work he can do, and even controls what he can eat or touch. Since the great majority of Indians are Hindus, the caste system has played an enormous role in the history of India, and it continues to exert a tremendous influence on more modern Indian culture and politics. How caste shapes society? It is rigid, hereditary membership into birth caste, marriage only among members of same caste, occupation choices are restricted, personal contact with other castes restricted, acceptance of fixed place in society. There are benefits of caste system. Members of caste rely on each other for support. It is a system of reciprocity and redistribution. Each caste has occupation and contributes to the good of the whole. Judgment gives gifts to the service provider. The caste or varna is an intermarrying group. It has a hereditary membership. A caste eats together. A high caste Brahmin doesn't eat with someone of lower caste. Different diets for different castes. There is a divide by occupation, like priest, warriors, merchant, peasants. Legal status and rights are based on the caste membership. Visible, they are the visible identifiers of caste. Historical development of caste, there is no commonly approved origin or history that explains the formation of Indian caste system. Common belief the caste system was formed during the period of migration of Indo-Aryan to Indian subcontinent. Indian caste system is rooted into Hinduism or in Hinduism and its order of four castes and four stages of life originated from Aryan invaders 4 to 5,000 years ago. Where does this system come from? The most widely accepted theory is that the four basic divisions of the Hindu caste system, the Varna, developed in the period of 1500 to 1000 BC as a result of Aryan conquest of India. The word caste comes from the Portuguese word casta, meaning pure. This Portuguese word expresses one of the most central value of Indian society, the idea of ritual purity. In India, the word varna or color denotes the fourfold division of Indian society. The word varna may have been used because each of the four castes was assigned a specific color. The laws of Manusmriti, text made up of 2685 verses, discussed religion, laws, customs, and politics. Authorship is credited to Manu, who is said to be the forefather of all humans. Author familiar with Vedic tradition and in the laws of Manu seeks to formalize different parts of life related to social customs and conventions. These includes the four stages of life, the caste system, the four aims of life, and the status of women in society. Social classification structure based on the four groups called varnas. They are divided into smaller jatis. Caste is hereditary. It places restriction on a person based on their caste. Things like occupation, economic status, laws are enforced. Caste unchanging in single lifetime. One cannot change the caste in his or her lifetime. Caste changes between lifetimes based on person's karma and dharma. Huge impact on India and is still practiced today. It is technically illegal. The caste system began in India after Aryan invaded and established their own rules for governing the society. The Aryans didn't permit marriage between their own people and people of culture they conquered. The caste system then was based upon the ideas that people are different, so they should have different roles. From 1000 to 500 BC, four classes of people emerged in India. Really, there are five groups. However, the untouchables are considered so low that they aren't even counted. Rigved period is more flexible than today's caste system. It was even possible to change the caste if necessary. Post-Vedic period. In this period, the caste system became more rigid and stricter. How it is developed? It is influenced by the economic and social factor. The caste system became traditional, hereditary system of social stratification. The Varnas or the caste which defines the group's social standings in marital and occupational matters are Brahmins. They are the scholar caste, Kshatriya, the warrior caste, Vaishya, the trader and agriculturalist, and Shudras, workers and cultivator caste. These four castes, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudras, are classical four divisions of Hindu society. In practice, however, there have also been many subdivisions. of these castes and they are known as jatis. Ghurye in 1962 identified the six features of caste system. Ghurye is the father of Indian sociology. According to Ghurye, the feature of the caste system, the first one is segmental division of society. The Hindu society is divided into different castes. Caste membership is determined by birth and not by selections or accomplishments. Hence, the caste status is termed as being ascribed, that is, by birth. Second characteristic, according to Ghurye, is hierarchy. Caste system has specific scheme of social preference in which they are arranged in a social and ritual hierarchy. A sense of high and low, superiority and inferiority is associated with ranking or grading. The Brahmins are placed at the top of hierarchy and are regarded as ritually pure or supreme. The untouchables considered most impure and are at the lowest rung of the hierarchy. In between are the Kshatriyas followed by Vaishyas. Thus, caste occupies a specific status in overall framework of caste hierarchy. Third characteristic is restriction on feeding and social interaction. Rules are laid down which govern the exchange of food and social interaction between different castes. There are restrictions on the kinds of food that can be eaten together, received, or exchanged among castes. Concept of pollution place severe restrictions on the extent of social interaction. Fourth is civil and religious disabilities and privileges of different caste sections. Each caste is considered to be more pure or impure than the other in a ritual sense of the term. The ideology of pollution and purity regulates the relationship between different castes significantly. There are several taboos practiced by the superior castes to preserve their ceremonial purity. Next is each caste has its own customs, traditions, practices, and rituals. It has its own informal rules, regulations, and procedures. Another characteristic is restriction on marriage. Endogamy or marriage within one's own caste or subcaste is an essential feature of caste system. Generally, people get married within their own caste or subcaste. However, there were few exceptions. In some region of India, the upper caste men could marry a lower caste women. This kind of marriage is known as hypergamy. Sixth characteristic is lack of unrestricted choices of occupation. Traditionally, each caste was associated with an occupation. They were ranked higher and lower on the basis of ritual purity and pollution of their associated occupation. The Brahmins who occupied the uppermost rank were prescribed the duties of acquiring and teaching sacred knowledge of performing sacrifices. Each caste had its own caste councils or panchayats where the grievances of the caste members were heard. Caste panchayats was regulating the behavior of caste people according to the prescribed norms and sanctioned social behavior. Theoretical approaches to understanding of caste. Hutton, in his book The Caste of India, held that central feature of caste system is endogamy. Around this fact, various restrictions and taboos are built up. The interaction among various castes do not violate these restrictions placed on various castes. Another important feature of caste system seen by Hutton is taboo on taking cooked food from other than their own caste. M.N. Srinivas chooses to study the structure of relations arising between the caste on the basis of these attributes. Thus, he introduces a dynamic aspect of caste identity. Interactional approach takes into account how castes are actually ranked with respect to another in local empirical context. According to Bellet, caste dynamics and identity are united by the two principles of segregation and hierarchy. He feels that caste stands in ritual and secular hierarchy expressed in the rules of interaction. By secular hierarchy, he meant that economic and political hierarchy, rituals being a part of religious system. The ritual system overlaps the political and economic system. Belle explains his viewpoint with reference to village Bisipara in Odisha. He has shown how the caste situation in Bisipara is changed and become more fluid after independence when the Kshatriyas lost much of their land. This caused a downslide in their ritual ranking as well. There was a real discernible change in the interaction pattern, such as acceptance and non acceptance of food from other caste. Marriott studied the arrangement of caste ranking in ritual interaction. He confirmed that ritual hierarchy is itself linked to economic and political hierarchies. Usually, economic and political rank tends to co- coincide. That is to say, both ritual and non ritual hierarchies affect the ranking in the caste order, though ritual hierarchies tend to play a greater role. Dumont added a new dimension to the study of caste is an interactional perspective. According to him, the local context has a role of caste, ranking, and identity. But this is a response to the ideology of hierarchy, which extends over the entire caste system. For Dumont, caste is a special type of inequality, and hierarchy is the essential value underlying the caste system. It is the value that integrates Hindu society. The various aspects of caste says are based on the principle of opposition between the pure and impure underlying them. Pure is superior to impure and has kept separate. The theoretical position of caste in analysis of Indian social system is highly complex. It constitutes both structural unit of social stratification as well as system. The distinction between the two would depend upon the level of analysis involved. Sociologists who look across the cultural view of caste have right from beginning associated with an autonomous principle of stratification, the basis of which is institutionalization, inequality, closure of social system in respect of social mobility, an elementary level of division of labor legitimized on ritual basis of reciprocity and emphasis on the quality rather than the performance. Today we discussed about the tribes, caste, modernization, globalization and privatization. That's all for today. Thank you very much. Namaskar.